Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The title is Life is Also About Meeting Yourself for the First Time. And I felt this was an important idea to speak about, that in life, because we start our eyes through the efforts of evolution start from a first person perspective. That means we don't see our face in the way we're naturally designed. We see our face through the reflection of what is outside of us. But the way we're genetically designed is to look out. That means from within, we're looking out. And it really feels like on some level, I can totally understand the yogis and mystics, those of the likes of Kabir and beyond. They perceived that the body was a house. Legit like a house. Sorry guys, this music was probably too loud. I wasn't noticing the sound levels. Okay, maybe it should be better now. This is half full. Alright. So pretty much we start from a first person position and we're automatically fascinated by what is outside of us. And based on the dimensions you see the human being, you can see the response to it. For example, let's say you're a kid born in this world. And let's say you come from a lineage of people who were carpenters, for example, Now, you're in this lineage of people who are carpenters, your ancestors were carpenters, their ancestors were carpenters. And so let's say you're kind of find yourself in a way where what you're seeing outside of yourself is the life for a carpenter. That means the young child being raised around carpenters is seeing everything to, for example, to all the tables that are being made or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And as an example, I'm just saying that child may feel that in the outer realms it has to be a carpenter. But let's say that child, that random kid who was a carpenter, suddenly heard a Mr.Within talk, and suddenly heard this talk that life is also about meeting yourself for the first time. So, in that case, the child would have to, being raised as a carpenter, conditioned as a carpenter, has to ask for a moment outside of whatever is outside of my eyes. Who am I? And I don't know if people are interested in this. I feel we are by nature, but we have built a civilization that avoids it. We have built a civilization that occupies the person before the person wonders about what it is. That child may go on living his whole life as a carpenter, or that child may wonder, wait a minute, what if nobody knows who I am? What if even I don't know who I am? And that's this spectacular thing. I remember when I was younger, way younger, like, I think this was 10 years ago or so, and I had this sort of insight where I noticed that my attention is going to the lives of others but the attention of the life of others is going to the attention of others. That means it's this strange thing that I feel people are not living the lives of their mind. They are living the mind that their body has been authorized, you know? So let's say you were a child of a carpenter, and there's actually this story that kind of fits in. And let's say you're the child of a carpenter, but then you saw a Shaolin monk. You saw a Shaolin monk walk by, or you saw a Shaolin monk do something, and you were like, "Oh my God, what am I doing being a carpenter?" You know. And so there's this actual story, Zen story, where there's this child that goes. He's the child of a carpenter, and he goes to his father, and he's like, "Father, I want to be a Shaolin monk." You know, and the father looks at the son. It's like, "Son, do you understand? Your grandfather was a carpenter. Do you understand? I'm a carpenter. Do you know?" And the son's like, "Yeah, Dad, but I want to be a Shaolin monk." And so that's the cool thing. That's like that kid has understood he's also here to experience himself for the first time, not necessarily in the context of the comfort that he was raised in. Do you know? Because if you're emotional, there's no need for thought. Have you noticed? A person can emotionally live a life without looking at things, without trying to comprehend things, you know? An emotional life means the mind's life has become more important. The inner realms have become more important than the outer realms, in a way where the outer realms, it doesn't matter. It's like, you know, sometimes I thought, what if there was a drug called happiness? Let's say in the future there was this drug, and this drug literally was called happiness, and let's say it had no symptoms, it had no side effects or whatever, and people just took this drug called happiness. It would be as if how many emotions would we be missing out on? How many ways of looking at life will be missing out on if we are just in one state, right? This doesn't mean don't be a pleasant, loving person. It just means that emotions, if treated as self, can be as as blinding as thoughts. That means if I think I'm a thought, done. It's like I can't do anything. I can't move. You know, those people whose beliefs are very firm, that means they can't move. They have to fight the belief, because if they choose to move, the belief won't be the belief. That's the thing about this reality. It doesn't matter how much a person has an opinion on something, it's the experiential advancement that suggests what is really there, or what has really been attained. You know, a person can read endlessly about skydiving, but if you don't skydive, what's the point? And a person can endlessly read about the mind, but if you don't use it, what's the point? You know? You know, that means it's like we have to learn to train our eyes to care for not just what is separate, but for the whole moment. Can you imagine being a being that anything that enters your presence, your whole moment of awareness, your mind space, you, in some sense, it's like you're seeking the efficiency of that. That means it's like when enough individuals are victorious, collective victory begins. When enough groups are victorious, then it's all. First, we have the ego of an individual. First, like the person's heart has an ego, you know? Then the person's family gives them an ego, you know? Then the person's neighborhood gives them an ego. Then their society gives them an ego. The city gives them an ego, you know? Then the whole nation gives them an ego. And then the planet gives you an ego. You know, then the universe gives you an ego. At the end of it, you're like, why do I have so many egos? What the fuck? You know, I'm telling you, there's something that people feel there are. You can never miss out the journey of your own eyes. In a sense, I remember when I was very young. This is even I don't know why I'm going back into my past, but I remember it was like so many people in this life when I was young would do things better. That's just the nature of reality. We can't do something at one state of mind if there is desire for expression. I don't know, pretty much you see things in life that are more advanced, then they become seeds planted in your mind. And then throughout the years, the willingness to act in a certain state of time and space, that willingness will come to fruition. What that means is um, we are weak. We start weak. Then we become strong and we feel we have gotten rid of the weakness. But really, in every new dimension one enters, you start off as a fool. That means if you don't fear being a fool, you won't fear accessing knowledge. All explorers in the world have been fools. Anyone who wants to do something new, that's you're a fool compared to everything in every system that doesn't want to change. And so I thought about it this way, that so many human beings, they have compassion for others, they love, like Mother Teresa level, they have, they are trying to share love and light, I suppose. But I will tell you that if you wonder truly how many people actually care about how unknown their eyes are to themselves, I would say for now, it's like a very slight, it's like a small percentage. Maybe most human beings, they're engaged with an activity as an object. And then after that, most creatures are engaged with objective activity, but human beings are engaged with subjective activity. But to wonder about a state that surpasses the object and the subject technically means a domain where we have to be rendered as fools because there is no form. So we are life forms right now, and so there's two dimensions. There's the life and then there's the form. And we feel that it's the form that gives the life, that provides the life. But in the middle of living this life, we're also noticing that there is spontaneous influences. It's as if, true, we are living as a temporary biological antenna, but the signals are not temporary. The signals are suggesting, something more. And so do not forget the unknown, whether it's in your inner realms or outer realms. In the outer realms, you forget the unknown, you'll act like you try to become a power becomes your toy. If any time a person forgets the unknown, they act like a king of knowledge. So anytime I'm acting like a king of knowledge, guys, I've forgotten the unknown, If I'm eating, like, here's the thing. Attention is the presence of life. And the conditions, circumstances of life that this attention finds itself. It surpasses form. Our mind is not an object, our body is. And if the mind wants to live like a body, it never can. Not that it never can, it can never be satisfied. That's the thing. That means, think about it, human beings are being raised, they're being raised in a known civilization. How the civilization is known is through knowledge, that's the main activity. But now, what we all know that is coming up, is the unknown, right? Right now, I'm in a known moment in space and time. We can talk about it, we can move as creatures, but we know that at the end of this life, we reach the concept we have given it, the end. It's a transition into the unknown. So that means it's like, the Ribu Gita says it. The Ribu Gita says there's the conscious waking state, there is the dream state, there's the deep sleep state, and beyond the deep sleep, there is the witness, the fourth state that is awake in all of them. That means it doesn't matter if you're conscious, it doesn't matter in the conscious waking state, it doesn't matter if you're conscious in a dream where your mind is creating a body for you and you're living through that, experiencing that body. Doesn't matter if it's an outer realm body or if it's an inner realm body or if there is no body. There is the fourth state, the witness, surpasses it all. For the yogic mind, it was to be conscious while asleep. I personally haven't experienced, like some yogis say, that when a person sleeps, right, that the last moment before they drift. Most people are not aware of it. Most people, and here's the intense thing, if you try to think about it, you can't fall asleep, you know? And if you don't have any attention on it, you would just go into sleep. So it's like that moment before the psychology enters its own subjective and objective non-existence. That moment before sleep is crucial. But it's so many things in this life that is obsessive in an individual dimension. In a collective dimension, the fear fades away, you know. There is one ultimate fear in this life, I feel, and I feel this fear surpasses even the fear of death. It is the fear of life. It's the fear of knowing on some level you could have lived more, but you didn't, you know. Or what did you live through? There's something in this world that it's like it's too easy if we do nothing. It's too easy to be like the birds and squirrels now, you know. This is why love even needs dimensions, you know. I would say that we have to build a civilization that the Bhakti yogi, the Karma yogi, the Raja yogi, and the Jnana yogi have efficient space. You see, human beings, think about it. It's like you try to conquer, it's like most human beings, you ask the average teenager, hey, what do you want to be? And it's like, trillionaire, you know. we have literally, excuse my language, but mind deaf the youth with surviving in an economical system rather than actually caring for the novelty that's going to update it beyond the systems we have defined. For me, everything, when I wake, you know what it is? It's as if like the greatness of the day either shows itself or tomorrow is a new day. In the outer realms, your brain is God. In the inner realms, God is your brain, you know? And beyond, you can say there is no longer a flaw. That means, can you imagine that man made a mistake, then he was given a correction, and then after his correction, he had made no mistake, so there was no mistake, you know? That's the cool thing about life. A person can make mistakes, but they can also fix it. Sometimes I could say it's not even about mistakes or not making a mistake. It's just about how you walk in the moment and how that is left to you as your mind. That means if people wondered about how they live, like right now in this moment, if you're a sad person, you're creating a memory of sadness for your future self. If you're just a happy person, you're creating a happy memory for your future self. If you're an honest person, you give your free self, your future self, a freedom beyond this memory. You know, there's some people on this planet who are trying to memorize things. There's some people who are trying to decondition. They're trying to forget. They're trying to forget what they never were to remember what they always were. That is mysticism in a nutshell. If you were a squirrel. And this world is phenomenal. Like, everything has and a sort of intent of give and take. That means it's as if you just give to the world, the world requires to give. And if the world doesn't want to give, the world wants you to take. And of course I'm saying this in a unique context, maybe in the context I've painted properly again, but it's like, I can tell you, we are human beings, but we have forgotten about our being, and we're just acting the human theatrics. The being, where the unknown is where the inner treasure is. For outer treasure, you need a known map. For inner treasure, you don't need a map. You are the treasure. I learned this from Tibetan Buddhism, which helped me kind of fly past a sort of deconditioning that goes on in the West, where truth is literally brought down to the level of dirt and then forgotten. You see, truth is not it's not a Halloween costume, but most religions and ideological systems treat it that way. You can say all religious people on the planet, they're just dressed in language. That means back in the day in hunter-gatherer tribes, they would put color on their face, and nowadays everybody is putting, instead of war paint on their face, it's subjective believery. It's like, what is this believery? Imagine, just like there's the brewery, there's the beliefery. A place where beliefs are brewed. Really, I'm just trying to make this point that when I was chasing a predestined expectation of my own future because I felt I was working hard only, it wasn't enough. This world needs life. If anything you do is lacking life, pretty much your lesson for the whole time would be to go towards the love that is simple enough to allow it. In some sense, there is no such thing as lucky or unlucky people, I would say. There is just people who are in the right room. They're in the right moment. I feel societies make you feel incomplete, but that's because society is incomplete. The world story is incomplete and people have stopped trying. We just need a network of designers to fix up this planet. I will tell you, the designers on this planet, they are the true prophets. For me, they're the same level of divinity. I'm a person who I was born in Iran, and so religion, church, and state are not separate in Iran. So, in some sense, religious ideology has been around. But for me, the same sort of uniqueness that I found in, I would say, the idea, the concept of revelation, something from the domain of mystery entering man. That idea is the same beauty I saw in the concept of the inventor. For me, the inventor is the prophet of the modern world, And when I say prophet, I mean, I don't mean it in the sense of like There's like there's the story about Buddha. They asked Buddha, "Hey Buddha, are there going to be other Buddhas after you?" And Buddha's going to be like, "No, bro. Buddhism would have spread so far that there wouldn't be a need for Buddhas." You know, that means enough people engaging the unknown to bring something new into the known. That is like realizing the message of like religion. You know, for me, it was very astonishing how religion really is a message, you know? And the message is not the truth. That means when somebody sends you a message like, hey, there's a party, you know, and so it's like that message is not the party. That message is a direction to the party, you know? And so people are worshiping the text message of the divine rather than actually realizing why the text message was sent. You know, the unknown text message. So for me, this is the thing. It's like when you look at everything, you cannot ignore design. When you see design is really what is constituting reality, what is real to us is what we perceive. And if the person can close their eyes and still perceive, that has as much influence as a reality. That means it doesn't matter if you're superstitious or not, there is another layer. The brain, the mind is living a life over the body's life. And this is why the body feels it has free will. So we are actually two lives, you know. My body's life is very different than my mind's life. Humor, for example, laughter or various emotions, they are significance. Their significance is what is happening to the mind's life. But in regards to like pain or physical comfort or whatever, that is the body's life, you know. And the task of the mind's life is to be gracious to its own body, you know. And this doesn't necessarily mean that in the trenches of, like imagine in the trenches of World War II, people could expect life to be luxurious. It's like there is in any great war, there's casualties, and there's a casualty to the psychology of man. You know, for a long time I wondered about what do we do with all these veterans from the mistakes of our species in the past to start war. What do we do with all these veterans that their psychology, their mind, their brain has literally been bruised? You know, imagine a child being sent to war. Like in Africa, there was this video of like, what do you call it? This young child holding a weapon. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, that child doesn't even understand. It's like when a child should be playing, a child going to war. Like it's messed up, you know. And so what does this mean? That means you cannot heal yourself if you do not become responsible for what you did. This is the truth of nature. If a person is running away from themselves, they will, in some sense, you can't heal. Or even if something heals, it's not your real self, you know. That means, I would say, in a moment where the human being notices the inevitable, simplicity becomes your ally. So that's really what I feel. You know, I feel that if, like I live, I don't know, 100 years and I'm really old at the end, it's going to be a life where I'm probably just going to declare my soul to walk gently. That's it. The body is an opportunity, and at the same time, the voice of man is an opportunity. And the only thing that, like, you know, human stuff, the human stomach needs food, right? And now, what the human mind needs to digest, its vision. There's no teaching other than it's a giant ass world, and it's like, open your eyes. On the shoulder of giants, we think we can control where we're heading. That's a door. And I feel that because we have opened up to the domain of communication, it is not enough expecting the world to know your mind. This is why boldness has to be taught at a young age. Literally, I told this in one of the talks, whoever you are, even with your own children, you know, like let's say a person as a child, right? And it's an angry child. Like this child is like unnecessarily angry, right? And what does that mean? It's not that people shouldn't be angry. People should control their state of mind. It doesn't matter if there's a good thought, bad thought. It's the control of what is projected in the outer realms. That means a person can be an angry person, but it doesn't mean that anger should spill in the outer realms. You know, let's say you are there's like I don't know, there's something about that's a testament to how observant you are as a being, right? That you can watch your own room of how your mind is happening. Then you can stop it. That is the only divine intervention, where your mind is, in some sense, it learns to honor the body. For me, anytime, this may sound hilarious, but like anytime something has happened, I do two things. Just I've been doing these as a kid. One, I pray for my future self. That's one thing I do. And the other thing I do is that I don't touch moments that I don't want to continue. And these two techniques, believe it or not, I mean, I noticed them later, but these have involuntarily, it's like I think at a certain point, I had given up on the story of the world, so I had stopped trying to fit into it. And as a kid, I'm saying as a young kid, that was the source of my shyness. You see, as some people, it's not that nobody is ever shy. You know, people are just comfortable and uncomfortable. That's it. You know, and if in the outer realms you're uncomfortable, that means in your inner realms you were uncomfortable to begin with. If I came to give a talk and I was like, I don't know, like if there was doubt, you know how slow that speed is? Doubt is really stops the speed. Doubt is like the brakes on your ideological life. Do you know? But trust is like the gas pedal. So in certain moments, you gotta know when to press the gas pedal, when to trust the moment and go forward. In certain moments, you gotta know when to hit the brakes. You know. And really, if these two things are considered, if we start treating ourselves as a vehicle, do you know how cool that is? Imagine like an alien came on this, like, you know, an alien entered society and the government was like, all right, human beings, we've been keeping away. For example, I'm saying this like future is a really sci-fi idea, but I'm saying imagine like the government's like, aliens are gonna like live with us, okay? So don't freak out, people, if you see aliens going to the grocery store. And imagine actual aliens are starting to slowly integrate in our society. Do you know, where humans and aliens, like imagine human beings showing racism to aliens, actual extraterrestrial aliens that are trying to live in our society. Do you know? That would be true racism, where we are literally looking at an alien and being cruel to it. That is like, the alien would have, I would be on the alien side. You know, anytime there's cruelty, that's not human. Cruelty is animal. Violence is animal. Evil is animal. That's it. Evil to me is an undeveloped brain. Unupdated brain. A brain that hasn't understood in gentleness and simplicity the true intelligence steps up. So the more we actually create a playful civilization, we will create a civilization where people imagine they have these barriers inside that is holding who they truly are. Those barriers no longer are required, so freedom pours into the streets of our lives. You know? What I'm trying to say is that human psychology and imagination, it can't be the past. It has to use the past like firewood to burn as a new future. The past is past. The past is just tap on the shoulder, that's it. I feel that human psychology has to unite. That means not in the outer realms. Not in the outer realms, everybody has to hold hands, kumbaya, you know, kumbaya, our way to a better civilization. It's not possible. Love is an inner experience. It's something that arises from within. So we can't love the outer realms and expect it's going to finish. Mother Teresa, I will bow to her, but I will not bow to her compassion. But I deep down, I know that their designers need to sit at a giant designer's table. Pretty much 8 billion beings, rather than caring about advancing their individual life, it's just there needs to be a care to advance their collective life. And then that would be a civilization where everybody is simultaneously a teacher and student of what has worked so far. You see, it's like, think of it this way. We are fighting, and therefore it's the easiest. And like I would tell you, we have the weakest defense system as human beings because we're not united. Have you heard this term? They say divide and conquer. If an advanced alien civilization was to invade, we have no defenses. We're already divided. We can so easily be conquered. And for example, some people hear the Dalai Lama preach compassion and they're like, oh, what a kind-hearted old man. But when I heard him, a Dalai Lama, saying compassion, he was literally giving a command. A sort of like Dalai Lama, like imagine like a multidimensional general giving a command, that something is necessary for the next phase of our evolution. And imagine human beings, like in the future, imagine like centuries had passed of aliens living in our society as like humans. That means the human, like the alien, had a passport, imagine, with like it had species. For example, it had also a planet of origin instead of place of birth, location of birth. It has planet of origin, So that would be like so far ahead where it would be as if like even imagine we attach I've written a lot of these ideas in my science fiction novel. Like imagine you connect advanced AI to animals, and even animals connected with advanced technology. Imagine you're in the grocery store and behind you waiting in line is a dolphin in a machine like capsule, waiting in line at the bank or something, So that is the thing, that we are welcoming the life force, of our civilization to advance. Just like how nations, when there is immigration and lends, they allow immigration is through the wealth that the immigration brings into the country, for example. It's like now we're wondering, but if there was extraterrestrials who can come and live in our society, it's like, in the future it's going to be so much better. In the future, they're just going to, like the future generations are going to look at our past and be like, oh man, that was awkward. They're just going to feel we were awkwardly living as multidimensional beings. We didn't have that confidence of our Earth yet. There's a difference between loving and being loved. You can say the planet loves everything on it. The planet loves itself. It's like even if the planet didn't love human beings but loved itself, because human beings are part of the planet, we are technically nature loving itself. It's just the human effort. We are battery packs, biological energy waiting to be piloted. And if the person doesn't pilot their life, you know how many other forces are waiting in line? Some metaphysical circles, I've had personal experience with this. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a child born on this planet from beginning, okay? And there is endless monsters that want to eat you. Imagine, okay? This is completely hypothetical, so people don't freak out. But imagine there's these giant monsters that want to eat you. And when these monsters eat you, you become limited to the monster's body. Do you know? And this is just, think of like Attack on Titan level. But I'm saying, like, let me tell you what it is. These monsters are ideological systems that have to eat or they die. So we don't realize we're in a society that if you just go with the flow, there's literally jaws of so many ideological systems waiting for you, whether they act like they're new or old. You see, when you look at geometry, it's a timeless state. You know, geometry can't be late for work. Geometry can't suffer. You know, when I look at on a substantial and form level of my existence, form can't die. You know, the atoms don't die. It's just that the human possibility vanishes. That's it. That's death. The atoms don't die. They return to a simpler state. There is no such thing as death. There's just complex states of movement and simple states of movement. And we are a very unique complex state of movement, a rare occurrence. That means we were looking at this planet to try to see what the most strangest creature is, and we are like, oh my god, we are the aliens compared to all the other species. It's like what is it? We don't see like penguins building skyscrapers. We don't see lions, you know, in Wall Street. You know, it's usually, I would say, the power hungry are just animals. Really, power is a win-win thing. If it's win-win, that is like the only way power cannot be lost. If there's one point of a giant system, if there's one, here's the thing. If one person is left behind, there will always be a hole in the ship. Human beings have to learn to be human together. That is the ultimate. That's literally like the next 100 years we gotta do. And it's really how conscious you are of language. You know, it's like, let's say somebody had a lot of knowledge, right? And you're like, great man, you have a lot of knowledge, and the person's like, yes, I do. You know, it's like, hey man, do you know everything? Yes, I do. I have studied for 3 years in this endless space-time continuum in a small building, and I've heard the opinions of creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Is it enough? You can live a life totally devoted to others. Is it enough? You can live a life totally devoted to yourself. Is that enough? And so the individual will never be satisfied because deep down it knows that it can see the collective possibility. That means, I would say, we must stop with stories of resurrection in media. You know, like something I noticed when I entered film school is like, our hope is resurrection, but that means destruction. That means defeat, then success. There's this idea, this technique. I would advise everybody to use this whenever they want to do something in this planet. Think of it this way, that the saying goes, if you aim for the moon, if you jump for the moon, you'll land in the stars. Something like that. So if any human being in any moment in the space-time continuum begins like a like an ideological chess game, begin trying to just fathom and see how far ahead they can see. It's like when you go like 10 steps ahead, 2 steps is nothing. It's an instant. It's easy for you. That means when you're trying to attain the confidence of, let's say, 10 steps, you know, the confidence for 2 steps is easy, you know? When you care about the unknown, you're actually caring to see how you have been introduced to the known in a different way. Imagine how many verbs in language, all languages that haven't been made yet. Imagine all the technologies that will open their eyes on this planet. Imagine all the human beings that will open their eyes on this planet. You know, for me, as long as we fear death, we never wonder about the beyond. There's some people who I would say before being born had already lived their lives. You see, that's the thing of wondering about the future of our species being a collective timeless phenomenon. And that's what's happening. Information, subjects defined us. And because subjects defined us, as the subjects go towards the speed of light, imagine in every nanosecond that you were a different sense of self. Every nanosecond. That means you would have no time to experience the self. So technically, if a subject moves at the speed of light to the experiencer in the domain of when a subject goes at the speed of light, it stops existing. When an object goes to faster than the speed of light, it stops existing. It stops existing subjectively. And I honestly feel the training, I often say that the truth is not outside, even though outside it's important to be true to the outwards, but the truth is not outside when a value system is in place. So it's as if like being a human being is like opening your eyes in a system. Now you can choose to look at that system from scratch. You can choose to buy what others are saying about the system. You can choose to totally avoid the system, not even care that you're in the system, and just, just breathe till the end of time as nothing. You can totally do that too. But it's as if we go within to realize what was without was never just without in that way. So we free our eyes by realizing the mind's sight. So the body's sight is liberated the moment the being realizes there's like 0.0 amount of zeros you want, 1% chance that we are the space, not just the body. And to know that we're the body means that literally we gotta know we're space first to know that. So we are an intelligence that is aware of space, then aware of stuff moving in space. This renders our minds that we wake up to through our bodies more ancient than our bodies. The mind, that means energy, was in the room before any interpretation of energy, whether manifest or unmanifest, whether it's potential or kinetic. And that's when you call in the mystics. So here's how it goes. Let's say the scientist, let's say the sociologist, we're starting as a personal society. So let's say the sociologist, even in academic view, so the sociologist calls the scientist. Okay, the scientist comes and looks at the, let's say, this unknown situation. The scientist calls the philosopher. The scientist calls the psychologist. The psychologist comes and looks at this unknown situation, and the psychologist is like, oh my God, we don't know what else to think about this. Call in the philosopher. They call in the philosopher. Do you know? Now, on parallel to the philosopher, there is also the same ambivalence mindset that the religious identity unfolds in. But I'm going to keep it in the academic view, in the secularized view. So the psychologist doesn't know what to do, calls the philosopher. Now, here's what's interesting. The philosopher comes and looks at the situation, and the philosopher can be content with the unknown. That means being an agnostic is like pretty much the first thing, the first neutrality required to truly comprehend philosophy. You know, that means a person has to step out of their own philosophy of life as a neutral space to observe the other philosophies of life. That means to be fascinated in the eyes of those who have lived before you, like how fascinated you are in your own lives. So the philosopher looks at the unknown. Now here is where it gets cooler. This is where the update our academics environment state as much as society and civilization needs. The philosopher, who does the philosopher call? The philosopher opens the phone and sees this is where, in some sense, the mystic is on speed dial. The mystic is what the philosopher calls. And the mystic, the philosopher says, if the philosophical mind requires that neutrality to be able to be a bird flying over the forest, but the mystic is not in analysis anymore, in an analysis mode. So the mystic would look at the unknown and be like, it's our living ground. That means what was seen as a problem to the mystic is a solution. So that means stretching down that ladder, right? The philosopher suddenly hears the mystic say, become a lover of the unknown. The philosopher suddenly realizes, yeah, that's how philosophy has grown, through loving the unknown and wondering, exploring beyond the limits of the species, the sight of the species, right? So the philosopher says, use the unknown. So let me say, it's like it went up the ladder. Now, I'm going to say this way. The mystic says, use the unknown. The philosopher hears this and shouts to the psychologist, use the unknown. You know, the psychologist shouts to the scientist, use the unknown. The scientist is like, what the fuck? You know, like our whole, this method is based on the known. What do you mean use the unknown? You know, and this is where the conflict is beginning. But the sociologist understands there needs to be the unknown, right? And what I mean by this is that our certainty is coming from experimentation. That means every moment in life is experimental. It's not whether you just sit down and consciously say, okay, you know, this experiment is the result. The issue even surpasses far beyond that, because we have an unknown variable to how our psychologies happen, right? And that unknown variable is dictated by how the free will moves. That means you can analyze something in the most incredible way, but when it has a free will of its own, and your analysis is nothing. You know, because the free will can instantly change. That means you can think somebody is a bad person, you know, have so many examples or so many ideas on it, but then suddenly you see their free will wants to move in a good way. You know? This is why really we have been judging our own selves, never the outer world. Because nobody's eyes are starting, I wouldn't say starting, but like our eyes are in the world, but not of it, as certain Muslim traditions have suggested. This means our mind is in our body, but our mind is not our body. Now, when I say mind, I'm saying that to the secular audience, to an audience that sees beyond the mind and the dialogue and language that requires to pilot the attention beyond the mind is different. It's like we can't avoid nature. And we can't avoid the vastness of nature. And because we're from nature, we cannot ignore the unknown vastness of ourselves. And because we can't ignore it, it's as if, what do we do with all the space? And creation had a suggestion. creativity is going to liberate the past from its own hammer of judgment. That means when you look at human society, it's such a complex Rubik's Cube that every day I look at it and I'm like, all right, nature's got this. Nature's got this. Nature's got this. But there's, in my heart, I feel like that we're walking on thin ice. And so if we cannot find something that unifies the human being, if we cannot find a unified being, we cannot be in a unified way, it in some sense makes our human individualism purposeless, because how long can an individual update? That means imagine you're systematically updating. At some point you're like, yo, it never ends. Change never ends in this world. So the whole point of life is not to think only change is for happiness or it's a sad outcome. It's just that you can control how a part of this universe is changing. That means an advanced civilization literally is so advanced that everything can fit. There is no wrong act when there is the street smarts of a species to use everything. We are cast away on an island, but it's a galactic island. There's so much we don't know about even the edge of our universe and the edge of our minds. The inner realm's edge, I've personally tried to, not out of desire, but out of allowance. There's been moments in my life where I feel just like how I imagine there's something like you saw in a really expensive telescope, right? And you're like, okay, might as well look into it. I've had moments where I've been in the States, I would say just the way my inner realms has evoked, that I have started being the watcher, but then I have gotten involved with the inner realm film. That means right now we're in a world where people, first of all, don't realize that normality is in some sense, like back in the day it was normal to wear top hats. Now we don't care. Now it's not normal to wear a top hat. Like if you wear a top hat now, there's something wrong with you. We have become so obsessed in trying to be cool to our era in history that we have forgotten all the innovations in other generations. I'm telling you, consumerism has denied the species its greatness, and I'm telling you, if it hadn't, it would have been able to sell more. That means it's like, let's say you're a person with a control mindset, or control complex, like you don't feel alive until you control something. Some people are like that. It really has to do with their powerlessness as a child. That means those who feel powerless in their youth, literally at some point the brain's like, why are you powerless? Seek power. And then holy shit, the person goes on a rampage of wanting to rule a nation or something. So there's something about the human mind that is trying to take something that it doesn't realize the desire is not in the outer rim. That means cruelty. You could be cruel to someone in your mind, but it doesn't mean you have to be in the outer rims. I've gotten angry. I have beat up people in my mind just as a simulation. Like what that means is I've gotten angry, but in the outer realms, I've been like nothing's happened. But in the inner realms, there has been like, or it's like, let me tell you, it's to realize you're a mind. Is your unborn right. To realize this mind surpasses objective living. That's the beauty of speech. On some level, like it is true. I am a person who talks a lot. I think if I was at King Arthur's table, I'd be Sir Talks a lot. Do you know? But but the point is, at the same time, I'm like, okay, if I don't use this brain, let's call it, for its most advanced possibility, then what am I doing? It's like being a master musician, but then playing the instrument like such a basic song. And people are like, what is this? You know, why is this person playing such a basic song when they're a master musician? And every person is in some sense has instantaneous mastery over their whole intelligence. Why? Because they're being it. What you are is literally like how an attributeless site has just has just positioned itself. Like, think of the mind being liquid, like water, and then in certain points of life, what is behavior, manifestation, attitude, individualism is suddenly becoming ice, right? What your true nature is like, the true nature is like gas, you know. You know, in the chat section says, or Sir laughs a lot, yeah? I think, I mean, it depends. I think comedians, like, I think, I don't know, laughter is nice. Laughter is the mind stretching it out, freedom. When you take life into a design level before you have an emotional analysis, you will have a perceptualist analysis. You know, that means it's like, for example, there's the Tim Hortons coffee cup. Now imagine, this is hilarious, but imagine if I'm like, yo, does this Tim Hortons coffee cup love me? You know, whatever I think, if it loves me, if it doesn't, if it's animate, if it's inanimate, it is what it is. That's the power of perception, right? That's why in the outer realms you keep it simple, you see what happens. In the outer realms you act complex, there's dissonance. In the inner realms it is okay to be complex, but in the outer realms there has consequences. That means, let's say I wanted to walk in such a like I don't know, like it's like people who do parkour, they have to mind their joints in their body. It's the soul is the commander, the unknown soul is the commander of the mind. The known mind is the commander of the body. The body is pretty much the peon. The body is like, I don't know, there's this game, World of Warcraft. Sorry, not World of Warcraft, Warcraft Frozen. And they had these characters called peons, and the character, like the voice actor, had just recorded this thing ready to work. Like, literally the character, every time you clicked on the character, would be like, ready to work, you know? Literally, that's all the character could do. If I was to add to the modern mythos, I would say the lords of karma never speak. They are either silent or they laugh. That means language is a tiny percentage of reality. That's why it's so easy for me to always add to it. And it should be easy for everyone. You know, the issue is, you know why people have stopped caring for knowledge? Not because knowledge isn't fascinating. To know more isn't fascinating. It's because they have spectrumized, they have hierarchized, if I can say, their reality. And not realizing the hierarchy is as abstract as the identity. This doesn't mean the conservative and liberal, they're like forces. You know, for me, sometimes when I look at a species, I'm like, when are we going to realize it's smarter when we work together? You know, but the species hasn't realized self-advancement is more important than collective advancement, so it's a win-lose setting. The individual and the personal, you personally may feel you win, but the outer realms doesn't update, and that's the biggest defeat. Pretty much, I'm just waiting for graffiti artists to go on the walls of streets, and you shouldn't do this, I'm saying this, but like, I'm just waiting to see that moment graffiti artists are like, do your eyes deserve? Imagine riding past the graffiti and seeing that. What do your eyes deserve? That means the mind can't continue to assume the body is going to be eternal, so it has to use it. This body is here to be used, but when I say used, it doesn't mean only used for a physical outcome. For me, I'm saying like we don't realize it, but our mind is the extension of our body, or our body is an extension of mind, based on language's ability to extract truth from the realm or left to those two options. And when it comes to the mind, the body being an extension of the mind, the body is like technically the mind. But if the mind is we say the mind is an extension of the body, we are simulating. So the brain is a simulator, is a simulating engine. It has to. That's how we survive. And what's fascinating is that, let's say a person doesn't eat food, from the internal, from inside your body, you start getting like signals, as if your body is reporting to you. There's this idea where, like, I think this is very important at this time, especially when you see freedom being replaced for obsession. We're living at a time where people feel let me tell you, any thought that you keep too long is like water that's stale, and bacteria comes into that water. So there is this thing that the person, I feel, shouldn't really hold on to an idea, because that idea, like obsession of the outer realms, of one tiny part of the outer realms, it's eating. Idol worship is body worship. Idea worship is mind worship. The soul doesn't need to worship. The soul is being what it's being the worshiper and the worshipped. The message, I feel, that is in the religious movements in this planet is that either you trust your universe or you don't. That's it. That's all that psychology can do. That means regardless of what book you read, at the end of it, it comes that now your inner landscape, regardless of how it is expanded or you have even moved beyond your inner landscape, a need for them. Think of it as if you were on a planet where nobody wanted to meet you. Imagine a child is born in a world. Imagine that a child was born in a world and nobody wanted to speak to this child. And this child was exactly like everybody was imagined on a global level, but just this one person nobody wanted to talk to. Right? That person would eventually wonder why. And then the person would wonder about their source. So in life, regardless of what happens, either an outer journey is in the driver's seat or an inner journey. If the inner journey is not in the driver's seat, the person doesn't care about experiences. See, it's not just about living life, it's also about consciously living life. That's the big thing. That's the big thing that this moment means. This time means. Now, that consciousness means that there has to be some sort of self-creation being synchronized to a world creation. That means that the way the world is happening, the self has to first ride the waves. That means imagine there was no, you were a person with a surfboard and you've never gone surfing. Like I've never gone surfing personally. Okay? I've seen the videos of surfing, but now I'm thinking if I was like, let's say the guy was cast away on an island, like the movie Castaway. The person would create a surfboard and let's say go surf the waves, and so that means the person had to learn surfing from scratch, right? So the person would first attempt. You attempt. First time the person tries to surf, oh my God, you don't know what you're doing. Second time, you don't know what you're doing. Third time, wait a minute, it seems like you're getting it. You still don't know what you're doing. Fourth time, you don't know what you're doing. Fifth time, you don't know what you're doing. Sixth time, you don't know what you're doing. Seventh time, you have understood, as you have experienced something to some level where you have seen other angles of it, So it is strange that we have to trust, like, our journeys in the smaller battles to then suddenly have a moment. Okay, I found a perfect way to say it. Heraclitus is the person in our human history who has come up with the word logos, right? Any word you hear in the English language that is, whether biology, ecology, um, uh, geology, like whatever, right? But the word logos, right? That was in some sense derived from Heraclitus. He was the first Greek philosopher that came up with that idea. And this inner movement, the logos, was kind of like how the soul of the planet was moving the mind of the person to their own body. It was like, that's the way I'm summarizing it. It's not, Heraclitus had a bit more different language. But Heraclitus has this quote where he says, "No man can step in the same river twice, and it is not the same man, and it is not the same river." This means every moment, every moment is once in a lifetime, That's what Heraclitus meant. That means you put your foot on that river, you put your foot again on the second time. It's not the same part of the river, it's different water particles. This means these smaller battles are moments of self-generation and world generation, right? So let's say that the self is a part of the world, and if the mind wanted to generate a self, it would be easier for it to copy-paste the world and then extract the self rather than see a self and then try to just build a world, By the way, I reduced the level of the music. Leanne, you mentioned that in the chat section was too low. It could also be that my body temperature is getting colder, and that automatically makes you speak like at a lower volume. But anyways, realize while you're here. It's not about living, trying to find a paradise of comfort. It's about the efficiency we can have in the smaller battles, in the smaller moments. I called this eventum in a talk. I created a word for it. I'm like, we have atom, as a word, as a consideration for the smallest particle, and then there's subparticles, right? So I was thinking, how do we create a word that psychologists could have a sort of ease to talk about the simplest unit of the psyche, So I thought of the thing that what is the person's mind? It's a storehouse of events, is it not? I think everybody would agree on the planet that the mind is a storehouse of events, and that's what a memory is. It is the reanimation of an outer realm event in the inner realm again, right? Excuse me. In our inner realms, it's a multidimensional landscape. Everybody's beliefs are true if they were to close their eyes or keep them open. That's how transcendental thought is. Technically, it's not, I don't want to use the word thought, but I would say the moment, it's made of smaller events, right? So eventum, right? And an eventron, a positively charged event, a negatively charged event, right? So, every moment is a battle, and the battle is like an event, and I just want to correlate this to what Heraclitus was saying. And if the audience keeps that image, you'll kind of see that it's like I don't know how people can know they're happy or sad until the journey of life is complete. Like literally, it's like the biological body. It's like a roller coaster. Let's say not the biological body, but let's say just existence, physical existence is like a roller coaster, and the roller coaster hasn't reached the end. So if you get out of the roller coaster, you miss out on what could have happened. You know, so the strategy is to be on the roller coaster and to keep our eyes open so we get to see the ride and what is happening. That means imagine that the consciousness, that unknown witness within, that unknown witness within is like a roller coaster ride that it's perfect. The roller coaster ride has no flaws. It's like an excellent roller coaster ride, right? So that means you are literally on a roller coaster ride of sight. Like space has a knowing that cannot be changed, but matter has a knowing that can be changed. I think it's really cool to meet new minds, and I feel also it is really cool to meet your own mind. Excuse me. To read the book of your own psychology and to make conclusions from freedom. Turbulence is like if the pilot freaks out about turbulence, it could never get through. The pilot has to see so much beyond the turbulence that the turbulence is very like anything the person has to do in life, they can simplify it by wanting something so much more advanced. There is a freedom that is earned. There is a freedom that is fought for. That means it doesn't matter if you deserve it or not. And then there is a freedom that was there before any freedom. That means, imagine children were instructed on this planet, learn to use your mind before your body. And people were like, how do I use my mind? And everybody was like, exactly, you got to figure it out. Every person has to master not only their craft, but their existence as an instrument. You know, that means treat yourself as an advanced technology that every day you're getting surprised in how it is happening. You know, I want to go into a quote tunnel. Let me see. Guys, for those who are new, a quote tunnel is pretty much, I'm going to read a bunch of quotes to see how the inner realms of people were before us. Okay, there we go. So, Rumi actually passed away on the same day I was born, but like 700 years ago. Okay, Rumi says everything. He's a Sufi mystic poet from ancient times. Rumi says everything that is made beautiful and fair and lovely is made for the eye of one who sees. Let the beauty of what you love be what you do. Okay. So I'll read that again. Let the beauty of what you love be what you do. So find a state of love, then do things in it. Then you'll always love what you're doing. Rumi, of course, is a mystic, and in these quotes from him I'm going to read for you, he's pointing to the divine. He says, the minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere, they're in each other all along. Rumi says that which God said to the rose, and caused it to laugh in full-blown beauty, he said to my heart, and made it 100 times more beautiful. He says, don't grieve. Anything you lose comes around in another form. That's great because I've lost some talks. That means I technically didn't lose it. Yay. Rumi says there are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss. To kneel down and to kneel and kiss the ground. There are 1,000 ways to go home again. Rumi says the garden of love is green, without limit, and yields many fruits, other than sorrow or joy. Love is beyond either condition. Without spring, without autumn, it is always fresh. Rumi says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. And And that's the thing that power does. Power is like building too many walls between your soul and the real world. So you become, it becomes easy to be cruel, and you feel there's no consequences anymore. Rumi says we are born of love. Love is our mother. This is love, Rumi says, to fly toward a secret sky, to cause 100 veils to fall each moment, first to let go of life, finally to take a step without feet. When he says to let go of life, he doesn't mean in the outer realms. Of course, he's a mystic. He means that you let, the Sufis have a saying, they would say, to die before you die. That means you realize your true nature beyond the idea of you. That means the idea of you breaks before the real you breaks, right? So you're a watcher. You become the presence of energy in an instant. Rumi says, scroll down to see the other quotes. Rumi says, everyone has been made for some particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in every heart. Rumi says, through love all that is bitter will be sweet. Through love all that is copper will be gold. Through love all dregs will become wine. Through love all pain will turn to medicine. So that means if stand-up comedians did their comedy through love, that laughter would be healing. But if it's through self-degradation, it can't be. That means it's like we had love, we had matter, and we had antimatter. We have love and we have anti-love. So if you speak through anti-love, there is no love. Rumi says, woman is a ray of God. She is not the earthly beloved. She is creative. She is not created. That means this is also has an archaic significance. That the feminine, the divine female energy is the freedom that creates. It's not just that every dimension of life has creation. Every human being has to create to move on. That's just the implication of a changing vision. But I'm saying that it's in some sense the biggest thing that it is we are creating our species. Wow. Literally. The advancement of the species can only be created, and you can't wait for it, you cannot hope for it, you cannot take it, it has to be created. It has to be from new eyes, from you. There is no order, whether new or ancient. It's all chaos from the beginning. The ancient Greeks nailed it down. The ancient Greeks were like, if you look at ancient Greek mythology, there is chaos, then there is chronos. That means it was like this thing where first there was no meaning, nothing made sense, there was no reality, and there was not even imagination. Imagination came after reality. First we had to imagine reality and then be so certain of that as our reality, then we could deny the imagination. Sorry guys, it's pretty chilly. Just in my inner realms, I gotta just visualize sunny days. Rumi says, something opens our wings, something makes boredom and hurt disappear. Someone fills the cup in front of us. We taste only sacredness. That's the unknown. The unknown gives your love. The unknown is like the hidden heartbeat of your mind. Rumi says grief can be the garden of compassion if you keep your heart open through everything. Your pain can become your greatest ally in your life's search for love and wisdom. Rumi says beauty surrounds us, but usually we need to be walking in a garden to know it. Wow, yeah. Rumi says, why should I be unhappy? Every parcel of my being is in full bloom. That means it's like everything in the universe is like one major event. That means regardless of how minor the person feels to the world event, it's like we are it. That means as far as I'm concerned, the universe is moving at the same time as I am, so the identity becomes a game to play there. Rumi says, you left and I cried tears of blood. Oh my God. My sorrow grows. It is not just that you left, but when you left, my eyes went with you. Now how will I cry? That's some deep poetry. Oh my God. Rumi says, when I die, I shall soar with angels, and when I die to the angel, what shall I become? You cannot help. What I shall become, you cannot imagine. Okay. I'm going to actually land the plane, guys, and just say a few words before I end the talk. In Rumi's poetry, and just in mystical poetry generally, there has been that care to try to somehow share the experience, the unknown experience with the world that is in conscious experience. That means, think of it this way. Carl Jung he said this thing, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and we would call it fate. Right? So if individuals conscious conscious. Now we have to attempt to make the collective unconscious conscious, right? And so that effort means that we look at how new we are to the world. We look at how new the world is to us. And then advancement is water the plants and watch them. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope this episode was helpful. And enjoy meeting yourself for the first time in this life. Every moment is as new as it's a new moment of meeting your own changed self.